So, welcome to the deep dive. Um, you know that feeling when your computer is running way too many heavy applications at once?
Oh, yeah. The internal fan is spinning so loud it basically sounds like an airplane taking off.
Right, exactly. And the cursor turns into that little spinning wheel of death, and everything just completely freezes.
Yeah, it's the worst.
And our immediate human instinct in that moment is, for some reason, to furiously click on more things. Like we try to open the task manager, we mash the keyboard, we try to force quit 5 things at once.
Which, of course, just makes the system crash completely. I mean,
Yeah.
you are demanding peak processing power from a system that is already completely maxed out. It's
Exactly.
the exact opposite of what the machine actually needs to function.
Right. And the human brain does the exact same thing when faced with a high stakes performance.
Oh, absolutely it does.
When the clock is counting down to a massive exam or, a career making pitch, our instinct is to furiously cram more data into our working memory.
Just trying to force one last piece of information in there.
Yeah. But neurobiology tells us that is the exact moment we actually need to step back and close the background apps. So today, for you listening, our mission is to unpack a really specific, highly practical guide.
It's a fascinating piece of source material.
It is. It was originally targeted at boarding students preparing for foundational exams, so the IB and IGCSEs. But looking at the science behind this guide, the principles here are a masterclass in how any brain handles the final 30 minutes before a high-stakes event.
Yeah, the core philosophy we're unpacking here is that these final 30 minutes are not, and I mean absolutely not, an extension of the studying phase.
Right, studying is done.
Exactly. They are a transition period. It's a biological and cognitive bridge between preparation and execution.
Mhm.
And if you try to learn new material on that bridge,
The structure collapses.
completely collapses.
So let's look at the immediate triage. Because before we get into what we should do, we need to look at what the source says we have to stop doing.
Right, to protect the brain's capacity.
Yeah, clearing the mental runway. The guide specifically warns against what it calls heavy revision. Even though that instinct to cram one last equation or like one last talking point is just so overwhelming.
Well, sure, because we associate more data with more security.
Like, if I just read this one more time, I'll be safe.
Exactly. But from a cognitive science perspective, your working memory, which is the mental workspace where you hold and manipulate information in real time,
Yeah.
it has a very strict ethical limit.
It's not a bottomless pit.
Not at all. So when you introduce completely new, unmastered information at the 11th hour, you aren't building knowledge. You are actually introducing uncertainty.
It kind of feels like trying to install a massive operating system update while you are actively trying to render a heavy 4K video.
Oh, that's a perfect way to describe it.
The active process, the rendering, is just going to crash because the processor is suddenly trying to allocate limited resources to this huge, unfamiliar file. Or, honestly, to use another analogy, it's like trying to forcefully pack a bulky sweater into an already exploding suitcase while you're literally sprinting to the airport gate.
Right, you're just going to make the zipper burst.
Yeah, it just makes a mess.
And psychologists actually call this proactive interference.
Proactive interference. Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
It means the new, half-baked information actively interferes with your ability to retrieve the solid, mastered information you spent weeks studying.
Oh, wow. So learning the new thing blocks the old thing.
Yes. If you clog up your limited working memory with a desperate attempt to memorize a new concept at minute 29, you literally have less cognitive bandwidth available to read and process the actual questions in front of you.
So the move isn't to just stare at a blank wall for half an hour, right?
Oh, no, you don't have to do that.
The guide suggests lightly reviewing familiar concepts, so skimming summary notes, basic flashcards, or just reminding yourself of foundational formulas you already know cold.
Yes, because confidence grows from reinforcing knowns, not introducing unknowns. You are greasing the neural grooves of things you already know, rather than trying to carve entirely new ones under extreme stress.
That makes a lot of sense. But then we shift from the academic material to the incredibly mundane.
The logistics.
Yeah, the guide spends a surprising amount of time emphasizing practical details. Verifying exam instructions, ensuring you have the correct pen, a backup calculator, a ruler, your specific candidate number.
Which sounds so basic.
It does. And I'm trying to understand the biological link here. I mean, why does knowing I have a backup black pen actually help me retrieve complex academic material?
Well, think of your brain's processing power as a pie chart. If 10% of that pie is occupied by a background, worry like Did I bring a backup pen? Am I going to run out of ink? Wait, how long do we have for section 2 again? That is 10% of your brain power that is completely unavailable for problem solving.
Oh, man. So a logistical panic literally steals IQ points in the moment.
It absolutely does.
It's the Zygarnik effect,
Yes, exactly.
where our brains fixate on unfinished tasks or unanswered questions. So if the question of do I have a ruler is unanswered, the brain just keeps processing it in the background.
It keeps a tab open.
Yeah.
And by controlling the controllable, your physical equipment, your timing strategy, your candidate number, you force those background tabs to close, you are freeing up the processor for the singular task of execution.
Okay, there's one more background app that needs to be force quit according to the source.
Oh, the social aspect.
Yeah, the toxic pretest huddle. The text strongly advises stepping away from those stressful pre-event conversations where everyone is frantically discussing topics or worrying about what others know right outside the dorms.
I mean, the social contagion of anxiety is incredibly powerful. Human beings are equipped with mirror neurons.
Right, so we subconsciously pick up and mimic the emotional states of those around us.
As a survival mechanism, yes. So if you are standing in a circle of people who are hyperventilating about a specific historical treaty you didn't study,
Oh, I've been there.
right, your brain registers their panic as a shared, immediate threat.
So even if I know 99% of the material perfectly, finding out someone else studied a different 1% suddenly makes my whole foundation crumble.
Exactly.
My brain thinks I'm the one in danger because the herd is panicking.
But the truth is, your preparation is your preparation. Finding out what someone else did or didn't study 30 minutes prior changes absolutely nothing about your actual capability.
It just derails your confidence.
And it introduces a massive cognitive load. So, step away. Listen to calming music. Protect your mental real estate.
Okay, so we've stopped actively overloading the working memory with new facts, we've locked down the logistics to save capacity, and we've walked away from the anxiety contagion.
The cognitive protection phase is complete.
But, I mean, no matter how logically prepared the brain is, when that clock ticks down, the body is going to dump adrenaline into the bloodstream. You can't just think your way out of that.
No, you can't. The body-mind connection takes over. And at this point, the guide shifts focus to physiological control.
Taming the physiology.
Exactly. Starting with the simple directive to arrive early and settle. Because rushing spikes adrenaline, which makes it physically harder to think clearly.
Yeah, if I'm sprinting through the halls, bursting through the doors at the last second, my body isn't preparing for an intellectual task. It thinks I'm fleeing a predator.
You are entering a full fight-or-flight state.
Right.
Your heart rate skyrockets, breathing becomes shallow, and crucially, your brain starts shutting down the prefrontal cortex.
Which is the logical problem-solving center.
Exactly. It shuts that down in favor of basic survival instincts routed through the amygdala.
Wow.
You cannot perform complex, nuanced tasks when your biology thinks you are about to be eaten.
So to stop that biological cascade, the brain needs a physical intervention. Which brings us to the guide's emphasis on controlled breathing to reverse that state.
The breath is the remote control for the nervous system.
It outlines a specific technique, essentially box breathing. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale slowly for 4 to 6 seconds, and repeat 4 or 5 times. But how does this actually stop the fight or flight response, like mechanically?
It is a mechanical override for your nervous system. When you consciously slow your exhalation, the physical movement of your diaphragm stimulates the vagus nerve.
And the vagus nerve is the main component of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes, the rest and digest network. When stimulated, it signals the brainstem to release acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that acts as a literal brake on your heart rate.
Oh, wow. So it isn't just about feeling peaceful or centered. I am physically changing my blood chemistry to turn the logical processor back on.
You are sending a chemical signal to the brain saying, we are safe, we are not being chased, reactivate the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, I follow the biology there, I really do. But I have a hard time accepting the guide's rule on managing energy levels.
The caffeine rule.
Yeah, it suggests water and a light carb snack like fruit or a cereal bar, but explicitly says to avoid excessive caffeine or sugary drinks.
Wait, isn't a massive cup of coffee the universal student survival tool?
For a lot of people, yes.
I mean, if I am exhausted from studying or have barely slept before a huge 90-minute pitch, a massive spike in alertness is exactly what I need to get through it. Are we really supposed to just drop the caffeine right when we need to be the most awake?
It's a great question. But the guide makes a crucial distinction between a temporary spike and stable energy.
Okay.
The biological cost of that massive stimulant spike during an already high-stress event is catastrophic for sustained focus.
Yes, because caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, which are the chemicals that make you feel sleepy, but it also triggers the release of adrenaline.
Oh, so I'm stacking chemical adrenaline on top of my natural performance anxiety adrenaline.
Exactly. And high doses of caffeine actually mimic the physical symptoms of a panic attack.
Like the jitters, racing heart, sweating.
Shallow breath, yeah. If your body is experiencing the physical symptoms of panic, your brain will often misinterpret those chemical side effects as actual terror.
That makes so much sense.
Not to mention the inevitable crash 20 minutes later when your blood sugar plummets and your focus shatters.
Right in the middle of the test.
Exactly. What you need for a 2-hour exam or a long pitch is stable energy. Complex carbohydrates provide a slow, consistent burn that keeps the brain fueled without the chemical anxiety or the sudden drop in cognitive function.
Okay, that connects directly to how we mentally process these physical sensations, too. The guide says something profound about dealing with inevitable jitters. It says, accept natural nerves.
Such powerful advice.
It tells the student to reframe the feeling of being nervous as excitement, readiness, and motivation to perform.
Yes, and this is rooted in the cognitive labeling theory of emotion.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. From a purely physiological standpoint, anxiety and excitement are almost identical states of arousal.
Really, they feel so different.
They do, but biologically.
Yeah.
Your heart races, your
Yeah.
palms sweat, your breathing quickens, you get butterflies in your stomach.
Okay, yeah. The physical sensation is exactly the same whether I am about to take a terrifying test or ride an amazing roller coaster.
The only difference is the cognitive label your brain attaches to that physical arousal.
Wow.
If you label it fear, your brain enters that threat response mode we talked about. You shrink back to survive. But by adopting a growth mindset, you actively relabel that exact same physical sensation as readiness.
So I just tell myself my heart is beating fast because my body is aggressively pumping oxygen to my brain so I can absolutely crush this.
Yes, you stop fighting the physical sensation. You transform the anxiety into productive, highly alert energy.
That is brilliant. Okay, so we've stopped the internal alarm bells, the working memory is protected, the vagus nerve has slowed the heart rate, and we've relabeled the adrenaline as readiness.
The runway is clear.
But telling the brain it is safe doesn't actually help it execute the task. To do that, the brain needs a roadmap, which is where the final phase comes into play: psychological priming, steering the ship to success.
Right. And the guide starts this phase with positive self-talk. It advises replacing catastrophic thoughts like, I am going to fail, with concrete operational affirmations like, I am ready, I can stay calm, and I'll take one question at a time.
Now, I know standing in a mirror saying, I am ready, can feel a bit hollow or cliche to some people.
Sure, it can feel a bit silly.
But when we look at the cognitive interference we discussed earlier, an internal monologue screaming, I'm going to fail, is really just another background app draining processing power.
It is massive cognitive interference.
Yeah.
You cannot efficiently retrieve complex information if part of your brain is simultaneously processing a vivid, high-definition scenario of your own failure.
That is such a good point.
Substituting the panic with a neutral or positive operational command quiets the alarm bells and redirects your focus to the immediate action required.
And to give the brain that clear roadmap of action, the text suggests taking a moment to mentally rehearse, visualizing success.
Yes, mental rehearsal.
It says to imagine reading questions carefully, writing clear answers, managing time well, and completing the paper feeling satisfied. I read this, and it sounds exactly like what Olympic athletes do in the tunnel before a gold medal race.
Oh, it's the exact same technique.
You see skiers with their eyes closed, physically moving their hands, visualizing every turn of the mountain. But visualizing a perfect slalom sprint makes sense for a physical sport. Does visualizing something as mundane as reading a question carefully actually do anything for an academic test taker?
It does. It primes the brain for effective performance in the exact same way it primes the skier.
Really?
Because exams and presentations are not just tests of memory recall, they are tests of focus, resilience, and procedural execution under pressure. When you visualize a physical or mental action, your brain actually activates the same motor and cognitive pathways as if you were physically doing it.
So I am pre-paving the neural pathways for calm behavior.
Exactly.
If I visualize myself calmly reading a confusing prompt, underlining the key verbs, and checking the clock, I am teaching my brain what calm execution feels like before I even pick up the pen.
You are rehearsing the mechanics of success. And notice that the visualization isn't just about staring at an A-plus grade on a piece of paper. You are visualizing the process.
Which ties directly into the final major point from the guide. It says, focus on the process, not the outcome. The final 30 minutes are for preparing to engage, not worrying about the final grade. Remind yourself that effort and strategy matter more than perfection, and marks are gained step by step.
This is really the synthesis of everything we've discussed about locus of control.
How so?
Well, if you spend your final 30 minutes obsessing over the final grade or whether you will get the job, you are focusing on a future state that is entirely outside of your immediate real-time control.
Right.
And lack of control breeds panic, which triggers the amygdala, which shuts down the prefrontal cortex.
The computer fans start spinning again.
Exactly.
But by shifting focus entirely away from the terrifying outcome and zooming all the way in on the immediate process, like just reading the next sentence, just taking the next breath, just answering the very next question, I regain total operational control.
You shrink the overwhelming mountain down to a single manageable step.
Yeah.
And the amygdala stays quiet because a single step isn't a threat.
It takes all the esoteric, paralyzing anxiety and turns it into just work, the mechanics of the next step.
Precisely.
So to bring it all together for you listening, whether you are walking into a boardroom, a job interview, or a literal exam hall, the final 30 minutes shape how things begin. And beginnings matter.
They dictate the trajectory of the entire performance.
Exactly. You have to trust the work you have already done. Protect your working memory by closing the background apps of new information and logistical panic. Use your breath to mechanically tell your brainstem you are safe. And strip away the focus on the terrifying outcome so you can strictly execute the process.
It is a biological and psychological blueprint for transforming vulnerability into a strategic advantage.
It really is. But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
The guide beautifully points out that reframing your nerves as excitement can transform anxiety into productive energy before the exam begins, which is a powerful tool in the waiting room.
Definitely.
But what if you took that exact same cognitive trick and applied it during the event itself?
Oh, I like where this is going.
Yeah. Like, what if the next time you are in the middle of a high-stakes performance and you suddenly encounter a totally unexpected, seemingly impossible obstacle or question? What if you don't view it as a threat that is going to ruin you? What if you view that sudden spike in your heart rate not as panic, but as the exact moment your newly primed, highly focused brain was built to solve?
The obstacle just becomes the trigger for peak performance.
Exactly. Something to think about. We'll
Yeah.
see you next time on The Deep Dive.